Arsenal's left-wing problem is being treated like a simple transfer question. Buy Barcola, buy Tzolis, buy Rodgers, sell Martinelli, move on from Trossard, pick a name, and the problem disappears. But that is lazy analysis, because Arsenal's left side is not just asking for a new player, it is asking for a new function. This case is not about which winger looks most exciting on a transfer graphic. It is about what Arteta actually needs from that side of the pitch. More pace, more control, more power, more 1v1 threat, more combination play in tight spaces. Because if Arsenal diagnose this wrongly, they could spend serious money and still have the same problem next season. So today we open the case file, Arsenal's left side, one signing away from being fixed, or a deeper tactical problem hiding in plain sight. Now let's be clear about the case. This is not a video about pretending one player will fix everything. That is the mistake. Arsenal's left side has become one of the most debated parts of the team because the question keeps changing shape. Some people see Martinelli and ask whether his final action is good enough. Some people see Trossard and ask whether he is a long-term solution. Some people see names like Barcola, Tzolis, or Rodgers and immediately think the answer is in the market. But the market can only help if the diagnosis is correct. Because this is not just about replacing a player, it is about understanding the role. What does Arsenal actually need from the left side? A runner, a creator, a ball carrier, a finisher, a wide player who holds the touchline, or a lock picker who can solve tight spaces? Until Arsenal answer that question clearly, every transfer name is just noise. Now this is where Martinelli and Trossard enter the case, because both players give Arsenal something valuable. Martinelli gives Arsenal speed, direct running, pressing energy, a threat when there is space behind the defense. When the game opens up, he can still hurt teams. Trossard gives Arsenal something different, calmness in tight spaces, clever movement, composure around the box, a player who can look quiet for long periods and still produce a decisive moment. So the debate is not as simple as saying one player is good and the other is not. That is too basic. The real issue is that neither profile has completely ended the left side question. Martinelli gives danger, but not always control. Trossard gives intelligence, but not always long-term explosiveness. And if Arsenal are now looking at new left-sided options, the question is not whether these players have failed. The question is whether Arsenal's standards have moved again. Because when a team is chasing the biggest prizes, useful is not always enough. The left side has to become decisive. This is why the left side debate becomes emotional. Because Martinelli is not just a player fans judge through numbers. For many Arsenal supporters, he represents energy, hunger, and the early part of the rebuild. He was there before Arsenal looked this serious again. He pressed like the shirt mattered. He ran like every loose ball was personal. And fans remember that. Trossard carries a different kind of attachment. He has given Arsenal intelligence, big moments, calm finishes, and the kind of usefulness every serious squad needs. So when people talk about moving either player on, it does not feel like a normal transfer discussion. It feels like a judgment on players who have helped Arsenal get here. But this is the brutal truth. Emotion can explain loyalty. It cannot decide the next phase of recruitment. If Arsenal want to dominate, they have to ask uncomfortable questions. Not because Martinelli or Trossard are useless, they are not, but because the standard has changed, and when the standard changes, the role must be judged again. Now we move from emotion into the market, because if Arsenal are looking at left-sided options, the profiles matter more than the names. Barcola represents one type of answer, wide threat, 1v1 danger, a player who can stretch a defense and attack from the outside. Tzolis represents a different kind of case. Output, final third production, a player whose numbers make people pay attention, but whose Premier League adaptation would still need to be examined carefully. Rodgers represents something else again, power, ball carrying, physical variety, a player who could give Arsenal a different attacking route, depending on how Arteta wants to use him. But this is the key point. These are not the same solutions. They do not solve the same problem, and that is why Arsenal have to be careful. If the left side needs a touchline winger, buy that. If it needs a tight space creator, buy that. If it needs power and ball carrying, buy that. But do not pretend every exciting attacking name fixes the same weakness. That is how clubs spend big money and still miss the point. Now this is the tactical heart of the case. Arsenal do not just need someone to stand on the left wing. They need the left side to behave differently. because there is a difference between attacking space and solving space. Martinelli is dangerous when space appears, that matters, but against compact teams, space does not always appear. It has to be created. That is why the left side role is so important. The player Arsenal choose cannot only be judged by pace, highlights, or reputation. He has to answer the real tactical question. Can he receive under pressure? Can he combine quickly? Can he make the fullback hesitate? Can he attack the box without needing the perfect pass? Can he help Arsenal break a defense that has no intention of opening up? That is the difference between a winger who looks dangerous and a winger who actually changes the structure of the attack. Because if Arsenal buy a player who only thrives in the same situations as the current options, they have not solved the left side. They have only changed the name on the shirt. This is why Arsenal have to be extremely careful, because if they buy the wrong kind of left-sided player, the fan base may feel excited for 2 weeks, and then frustrated for an entire season. A new signing can create hope, but the wrong profile creates the same old problem with a different face. If Arsenal needs someone to solve tight spaces, then pure pace is not enough. If Arsenal needs someone to attack the box, then touchline width alone is not enough. If Arsenal needs someone to stretch the pitch, then a player who constantly comes inside may not be enough. This is why the left side case is so delicate. The club cannot simply ask, who is the best player available? They have to ask, who changes the behavior of that side? Because the right signing will not only improve the left wing, he will improve the left 8, he will improve the fullback relationship, he will improve the striker's service, he will make Saka harder to overload on the opposite side. That is what Arsenal should be buying, not just a winger, a left side solution. So where does that leave the case? It leaves Arsenal with a decision that is bigger than one name, because Barcola, Tzolis, Rodgers, Martinelli, and Trossard all represent different answers. But Arsenal cannot afford to ask the wrong question. If the question is simply, who is the most exciting winger? Then the answer may look good on a thumbnail and still fail on the pitch. If the question is, who scores the most goals? Then Arsenal may ignore the deeper structure of the left side. If the question is, who is the biggest name? Then the club risks buying reputation instead of function. The real question has to be sharper. Who makes Arsenal's left side harder to defend? Who gives Arteta a different solution against compact teams? Who connects the winger, the left 8, the fullback, and the striker? Who makes the attack less predictable without damaging the control Arsenal already have? That is the level of thinking this decision demands. Because Arsenal are not trying to win the transfer window, they are trying to build an attack that survives the biggest matches. So here is the verdict. Arsenal's left-wing problem is bigger than one signing. It is not simply Martinelli. It is not simply Trossard. It is not simply Barcola, Tzolis, Rodgers, or whichever name appears next on the transfer board. The real case is function. What does Arsenal need that side to become? If they need pace, buy pace. If they need power, buy power. If they need a lock picker, buy a lock picker. If they need a wide player who changes the whole left side structure, then do not settle for a player who only looks exciting in open space. That is the danger. Arsenal could spend serious money and still fail to solve the real problem, because replacing a player is easy. Replacing a function is harder. So the ruling is this: the right signing is not the biggest name, it is not the loudest rumor, it is not the player who wins the transfer window argument for 1 week. The right signing is the one who makes Arsenal's left side more complete, more connected, more dangerous, more unpredictable, and harder to defend in the biggest matches. That is what Arteta and Berta must get right. Not just a winger, a left side solution. Case closed. If you want Arsenal debates opened properly, evidence examined, and verdicts delivered without lazy hot takes, subscribe to Cannon Casefile. The next case is already open.